On this episode of the Pop Culture Decoded Show, it's all Breaking Bad. We look at how Breaking Bad relates to Westerns and The Godfather, we dissect an iconic scene, and we'll break down a new teaser for the El Camino movie. With the release of the upcoming Breaking Bad movie, El Camino, we wanted to take a look back at the original series and dissect a few scenes. Nate, what do you want to talk about today?
So I brought in the episode 11 from season 4, Crawl Space. It's one of my favorite episodes, just because so many things happen. Okay. And also, technically, I think it's definitely something worth talking about. It is very, very interesting. And before we talk about it, I think we need to sort of talk about the cinematographer. I think he's played such an important role in the show, right? So how I want to talk about this is, according to him, there are 3 big influences when he was filming Breaking Bad. One is surprisingly Godfather. It's very different visually, but actually there's a lot in common. And I think it's especially evident in a lot of interior scenes. So we're gonna look at this scene from Crawl Space. It's when Walter is talking to Tyrus, but I mostly want to talk about lighting here.
Okay.
So what Godfather is very famous for is it was the very first film that did a very unique sort of lighting, which was sort of the very minimal overhead lighting. And if you actually see, especially in a lot of the meth lab scene, is that they actually use a lot of overhead lights. If you actually see the overall lighting in the place, there's a lot of lamps right above. You can see a lot of that, and especially if you look at right here, you can see shadows, a lot of shadows here. A lot of shadows, which is very kind of peculiar because a lot of TV shows and movies, they light the face a lot. And also that's why they use reflectors to sort of bounce the light off. But actually what's funny is instead of bouncing the light onto the face, they bounce it off and then it sort of gets dispersed here. And a lot of lighting is sort of just on their body and not their face. And what it does is it adds sort of a complexity to the lighting. And I think a lot of problem that I have with modern television is everything is so well lit. Breaking Bad uses a lot of different sort of shadows and lights, and there's definitely a contrast to it. And also, if you look at it a lot, you can definitely see.
Yeah, like right there, so
there.
Dark.
Especially in the close-up scenes of the faces. You can definitely see sort of a line forming. The light is obviously coming from here. There's no direct light coming on to his face.
You see the outline.
Right. So it sort of divides his face in half, where one part of his face is sort of lit up, but another part of his face is not. And that's actually also something that Godfather sort of uses, albeit a little differently. So Godfather, cinematography by Gordon Willis, who is a very important figure in the history of sort of cinematography, also uses a lot of shadows. And he was, in a lot of ways, one of the very first person to do this in sort of like mainstream big cinema. And how he used it a lot is, again, he used overhead shots. And that, what it does is it puts a lot of shadow near the eyes. Actually, there's a very funny story where someone from the studio said, I can't see the eye. Like, I can't see what's happening. And the director and the cinematographer would say that it doesn't really matter. He really wanted to focus sort of on the entire expression of the face rather than the eye, which is usually how actors these days sort of act, using their eyes. But he actually really wanted to focus on using the entire face to sort of act.
So the lighting that you're talking about really accentuates certain parts of his face and gives it more depth. You see the shadow is causing the deepest blacks and really like an abyss, and really conveys his emotion, his pain.
It really makes it more complex because you have like places where it's really well lit, and then where it's half lit, and then where it's sort of like very darkly lit. So it's like it does add complexity and, as you said, depth. So that was it for me. What did you want to talk about, Carter?
I wanted to talk about a scene from season 3, episode 1, No Mas.
The hell's going on in there?
So in this scene, the Salamanca cousins are arriving from Mexico, going across the border, getting smuggled in this truck full of hay with some other immigrants. I wanted to talk about this scene right here. We get a great frame within a frame. So what I mean by that is the camera's inside the truck, and you get this natural frame of the back of the hay truck that points your eye towards the action here.
Now that I'm just looking at the frame, do you know that ending scene in Searchers? It's another like very famous Western. Yeah, which has been very influential, and I'm seeing this resembles that a lot.
Yeah. So then as we continue here, we go to a very interesting shot. We get to this giant wide shot. Eyes are looking at just these small figures in this vast landscape. So why do you think they chose to go to this shot?
We're in a way sort of turning away from the violence. We're taking a step back and looking at it and, you know, sort of showing how this violence is so meaningless, how it's so quick. And when you look at it from far away, it's just nothing. When in fact, if we had a close-up, it would have had a huge impact. You know, seeing this like intense moment up close, seeing the fear, but there's almost no emotion in this scene. That's what I'm getting.
I definitely agree with that. It's clear that it's an average day for them almost. They've done this many times.
That makes the violence even more brutal, because like, you know, in horror movies, it's always about what you imagine is worse than what you actually see.
The cinematographer actually singled this shot out in a couple of interviews as one of his favorites. And what he said was, very often we'll use a wide shot where everyone else in the world would have used a close-up. For example, in season 3's opening episode, the driver is shot on the ground. As opposed to going to a great big close-up of a gun and seeing that big thing burst into our face, we hear a tiny little pop. We all know what's happening, and it makes us want to see more. That's the beauty of these wide shots. So I thought that was another really interesting point that he raised up, that the audience is trained by media and probably by Breaking Bad as well, that they're going to get this violence and get, you know, a close-up of someone getting shot.
They're sort of playing with our expectations.
Playing with our expectations. And also just a great shot of the composition of, you know, just a built-in dichotomy between the beauty of the scene and the violence and death that the cousins are bringing.
So during the Emmys, the new teaser for El Camino dropped. It didn't seem like there was a lot, but it seemed like the fans were picking it apart. They actually found a surprising number of sort of hints and clues. Did you notice anything?
Yeah, I did notice something. So let's take a look here. So first of all, this is the El Camino that Jesse escaped in after the last episode of Breaking Bad. It's Todd's El Camino. So right here, someone on Reddit actually lightened the image and found some of the same rock formations in the background and found out that it was actually the exact same place where Jesse and Walt first cooked, which is also where Ozymandias took place, where Hank died, and where Walt buried his money. And then on the radio, they're talking about 9 bodies. So we took a look back at the finale to confirm, and it is 8 Nazis that Walt killed, and then Walt himself. So that would be 9. So that's it for this teaser. But a full trailer actually came out the next day, and our team here at Insider broke that down. So if you want to watch that, check out our YouTube channel.
That's it for today. We'll see you next time. You know, studios should really let the filmmakers do their job and not get in the way.
Studios, if you're listening.
Studios.